Hazakim Bukim, everybody. Welcome. Bukim Abayim. Thanks for joining us today. We're learning today, Hashem, Parashat Shavua, Parashat Toldot. Learning Leilui Nishmat Shachnaz Bateshrat. Learning Leilui Nishmat, all of the terror victims from the attack yesterday in Israel. May Hashem make their neshamot. First, Hashem yinkom damam, and Hashem should make their neshamot go higher and higher in Gan Eden. Hashem. Leilui Nishmat Menashe ben Chanoch. Hashem, they should all be Melitze Yosher for everyone, and for the Flash Tema of Shachar ben Chana, Mordechai ben Adina, and Kol Cholei Yisrael B'Baruch ben Tzivya. Everybody who needs a Refuah Shlema, Hashem should send them a Refuah Shlema very quickly. Amen. Okay, so we start off the parasha. We actually already started talking about the idea that let's get a couple of extra chairs, guys. Can we get some extra chairs, please, for everyone to have a seat? Sorry. Mechila. Thank you so much. Okay, so we started off talking about Shnei Goyim bebitnech u'Shnei Leumim mima'ech yiparedu. The Torah tells us that there were two Goyim in the stomach of Rivka. Two nations, right? One is Yaakov, obviously, and the other one is Esav. Okay, very important. Now, we spoke about the idea that Rashi tells us they're Shnei Geim, which means that they are two very proud people, which we're referring to Rebbe and Antoninus. We spoke about that on Sunday, Baruch Hashem. But now let's talk about the very interesting birth that took place over here. It says over here something very interesting. It says that Yaakov Avinu was holding on to the foot of Esav, to the heel of Esav, when they were born. It says that they were born, right? Now, first of all, before we even get there, this is a very interesting question. Why is it that the Torah says the word Tomim? Tomim means twins, but really it's supposed to be Te'omim. Te'omim. That's how you say the word twins. But if you look in the actual Torah, it's written without the aleph. It's supposed to be Taf, Aleph, Vav, Mem, Yud, Mem, Te'omim.
Because they're not identical.
Okay, well, they're not identical, but Rashi gives another answer. Again, the question is, why does it say Tomim? It should say Te'omim. Says Rashi, Chaser. It's missing the aleph, right? By Tamar, when Tamar had her two kids, it says Te'omim. So the Torah knows how to say the word Te'omim, obviously, right? And it says it many times. So then in that case, why over here is it missing the aleph? Says Rashi, Lefi sheshneim tzadikim, because both Peretz and Zerach were tzadikim. And therefore the pregnancy, so to say, was full, it was complete, because both of them ended up being holy and righteous people. But over here, one of them was Yaakov Avinu, he was a tzaddik. Another one was Esav, he was a rasha. So therefore, the Torah, in order to signify that concept, took out the aleph from the word te'omim and just called it tomim.
So before he was born, he was given a title of a rasha.
From before he was born, he was already, no, because at that point, remember, it says that even when she would walk by, he was still in the uterus, he was kicking the code to Avodah Zarah.
So perfect.
Yeah.
The creator.
Okay, I know where you're going. I know, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to cut you off. You're going into the philosophical question about does he have choice or not. I understand. We're gonna leave it for now. We have to move on because it's a lengthy subject. So let's.
I think 1 second of yours. In the beten of the mother is Hashem teaching the children Torah.
Yes.
Esau was not learning.
Oh,
He started from there.
it's already.
I'm
That's
sorry that I
exactly.
interrupted you,
That's
but I
okay.
cannot stop.
That's
While he
okay.
was not
No, that's
learning.
okay. You're answering the same thing that I said.
Yeah.
That already while he was in the stomach, he was already doing things bad. Okay, fine, very good. Now, very good. Now, it says over here, "Vayetze Rishon Admoni, kulo ke'aderet se'ar." It says the first one came out red. He was entirely like a almost like a big piece of hair. Vayikru shmo Esav. They called him Esav. Now the word Esav comes from the word asui. Asui means he's done, he's complete. He's somebody that already is like fully formed. Usually you have a man that has that much hair. He's like, 60 years old. This was a baby, nothing but hair. You look at him, he's like a beast, like all hair. Amazing thing. So that's why they call him Esav. Now, and after this, Yatza Achiv, Veyado Chezet Ba'akev Esav. So then his brother came out, and his hand was holding on to the heel of Esav. Vayikra Shmo Yaakov. So they called him Yaakov because of the fact that he was holding on to his hand. Okev means he was like following him, like grabbing hold of him, right? Grabbing hold of his heel. So it's a very interesting discussion over here. Why is it that Yaakov, of all the body parts of Esav, held on to his heel? It's a very interesting thing that I saw. There's an answer given by the Moshav's Kenim of the Baalei HaTosfot. And the answer they give is very interesting. They say something I never heard before. Esav, we know, is compared to, in Chazal, Chazir, pig. The reason that he's compared to pig, whenever the Torah talks about the kosher animals, the Torah refers to 4 specific kosher animals, and each one represents a different exile of the Jewish people, of the non-kosher animals. I mean to say, it gives examples of animals that have a split hoof, but they don't re-chew their own food. Or you have an animal that re-chews its own food, but it doesn't have split hooves, right? So for that reason, the Torah says each one of them represents a different exile of the Jewish people. The pig represents the exile of Esav. Now, why is that? Famously, it's brought down, Esav has this quality. Esav on the outside wants to show that he is good, that he's kosher. So he shows you he's got split hooves, right? The pig shows you that he's got split hooves, but on the inside, he doesn't have it. He's missing it, right? That's a big problem. So that says the Moshav Zekenim is the reason that Yaakov grabbed hold of the heel, because the heel of the pig is the part that shows that it's kosher. You understand? So Yaakov only grabbed onto the heel. He didn't grab onto a different part of Esau's body because the rest of it is not a holy spot to touch. So it's important to understand this. I want to read to you what the Kli Yakar says in Parashat Shemini. He says the following: וביאור עניין זה שסימן טהרה שבכולם מוסיף טומאה על טומאתן כדרך שנו בעשיו, שנמשל לחזיר, שפושט את טלפיו להראות כאילו כשר, ותוכו מלא תוך ומרמה. So Esav has this quality that we just said. וזה מורה על כל מי שאין תוכו כברו, כמידת הצבועים המראים את עצמם כשרים, והמה בלי ספק גבוהים מן הרשע הגמור שתוכו כברו שווין לרעה. Meaning, asks the Kli Yakar an interesting, very interesting question. Who would you say is worse? You have a fellow that's a rasha. He's a wicked man. He's outwardly wicked. Let's say you have this guy on the radio, Hashem Yishmor, saying that we should hang people by their tefillin. Hashem Yishmor. שמעת את הסיפור הזה עכשיו? בארץ? זה אחד. This guy decided to get up and say that we should hang people by their tefillin. Some idiot that shouldn't have a platform to speak at all to anybody, let alone on the National Public Radio of Israel. Okay, fine. That's what this idiot decided to say. Fine.
Also, there was one guy that put this tefillin.
Yeah, Hashem Yishmor. So here's a guy. So I would ask you, what would you say is worse? Here's a person. He's obviously a rasha. He's not hiding that he's a rasha. He's outwardly a rasha. Inside rasha, outside rasha, all around rasha, unfortunately. Okay. Then you have a person that outwardly, he seems 100% kosher. He looks very kosher. He seems like a great guy. Everything good, everything wonderful. But on the inside, he's rotten. He's corrupt. Hashem Yishmor.
His words.
What would you say? So says the Kli Yakar. The Kli Yakar makes a very daring statement. I'll read it to you again. I just read it. He says, "V'zeh moreh al kol mi she'en tocho kebaro kemidat hatzivuim." This talks about people that their inside is not the same as their outside. They're phony. Hamar'im et atzmam ksherim. They appear to be kosher. Vehem bli safek gru'im min harasha hagamur shetocho ubaro shavim lera'ah. This guy is much worse, says the Kli Yakar, than a real wicked rasha that you see he's a rasha and you know he's a rasha, but this guy is trying to show he's kosher, but he's inside a rasha. That's a very daring and bold statement. Now, it's important to be aware that this concept cannot just be stated like that. It has to be modified. It has to be explained. There's a very important story in the Gemara in Masechet Berachot about the great Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Yehoshua. Are you guys familiar with this story? No? Okay. Rabban Gamliel was the head of the Sanhedrin. He had a history with the great Rabbi Yehoshua, who was the Av Bet Din. In the Sanhedrin, the highest rank was Nasi, the head of the whole thing. The second rank was called Av Bet Din. He was the head of the Bet Din, but the Nasi was on top of it. Okay, fine. The story with Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Yehoshua had to do, it started off with a story about Yom Kippur. Remember back then there was no idea called a calendar. I mean, it could be they had, but the point is that the months were decided based on testimony from witnesses that come to court and say, we saw the new moon. They see the moon just like a little sliver. They come to court, we say, we saw the new moon. Then the Bet Din announces today is Rosh Chodesh, right? That's how Rosh Chodesh used to work. So what happened was that there was a debate between Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Yehoshua about when to decide Rosh Chodesh should be for none other than Chodesh Tishrei. Now, Chodesh Tishrei, that Rosh Chodesh is very significant because Chodesh Tishrei, the first day of the month, is Rosh Hashanah. And then 10 days later, it's going to be Yom Kippur. Now, what happened was that Rabbi Yehoshua felt that Yom Kippur was a day earlier, and Rosh Chodesh was a day earlier. So he got up and he explained that he feels that Yom Kippur should be a day earlier. Rabban Gamliel, who's the Nasi, canceled his opinion, and said, no, it's going to be the following day. And he forced Rabbi Yehoshua to come to the Bet Midrash that day with his wallet, with his stick, carrying everything like a regular weekday, in order that he should show that he subdues himself to the opinion of Rabban Gamliel. Yeah, the rabbis were very taken aback by it. Like, what are you making him come in? Like he thinks today is Yom Kippur. I say, he said, no, he has to come in today with everything. That's what Rabban Gamliel did. Now, Rabban Gamliel also, there was another incident where there was a student. The Gemara doesn't tell you the beginning of the story who the student was, but there was a student that came and asked Rabban Gamliel whether Tfilat Arvit is Reshut or Chova, which means, do you have to pray Arvit or is it an option? That was the question. Why? What's the reason for the question? Because there was no sacrifice that was offered at night. It was just the leftover from the daytime. And we know the tefillot that we have are corresponding to the sacrifices of Bet HaMikdash. There was one in the morning, there was one before sunset. So we have Shachrit, we have Mincha. But the question was, there's no sacrifice at night, so is there really an obligation to pray Arvit or not? Now for us, it's irrelevant because of the fact that we all pray Arvit, because the Rambam writes, once we accepted it upon ourselves, it became an obligation. So at a certain point in history, Klal Yisrael accepted it upon themselves to do Arvit. Okay, so we do it. But in the strict letter of the law, is it an obligation or not? So this was a big debate between, again, Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Yehoshua, whether it's Reshut or whether it's Chovah. And Rabban Gamliel got up and said, if anybody here disagrees, right, with what I said, let him speak. Now, this student had told him, you say this, but Rabbi Yehoshua says that. So he kind of instigated something over there, right? So he said, but Rabbi Yehoshua, you're not getting up to speak, but I heard that you disagree with me, right? So he made a little bit of an issue again, and Rabbi Yeshua wasn't interested in getting involved in that. So Rabbi Yeshua left, and the rabbis got upset at Rabban Gamliel, and they were very frustrated with his attitude, and they decided we're demoting you, we're taking you away from your position of being Nasi of the Sanhedrin for what you did to Rabbi Yeshua. They demoted him, and instead they put the famous 18-year-old scholar that we all read about in the Haggadah Shel Pesach, named Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. He didn't know if he should take the job or not, so he said, I can't answer you. He went to ask his wife first. His wife said to him, I don't understand. You're 18 years old. You expect all these rabbis to listen to you? They're going to laugh in your face. So what happened? Hashem made a miracle for him, and he grew 18 strands of long white hair for his beard. So his beard looked like he was 70 years old. And that's why famously in the Haggadah, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, Harei ani keben 70 shana. I'm like 70 years old. What does it mean I'm like 70 years old? Like, he's 18 years old, but he looks like he's 70 because his beard looks all white. And Hashem made that miracle for him so that in order that he should be accepted by the Sanhedrin, that they should see that Hashem treats him and his knowledge as if he's like a 70-year-old.
How come they choose him if he was so young?
That's a great question. The Gemara says because he had zchut avot, he had merit from his forefathers. He was very wealthy. Nobody could buy him. He was extremely wealthy, and he also had connections with the government. He was everything that was necessary for the job.
So now the power.
He has exactly. He had all the power to do it.
So Rabbi Gabriel was right. Who was right in this case?
Okay, who was? That's a different question. That's a different question. But the point is, they demoted Rabban Gamliel. Okay. So now,
Rabbi Gabriel was the other rabbi.
they took Rabban Gamliel out and they put Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah instead. Now, here's the point. Why am I discussing this whole thing? Guys.
We have to listen.
Rabban Gamliel said the following. This is a very interesting discussion now. Rabban Gamliel was very selective who he let into the yeshiva. Was very selective. He said, whoever his inside is not like his outside, kol mi she'en tocho kebaro, I don't want to teach him Torah. If your inside is not identical to your outside, I don't let you into the yeshiva. I put a guard here outside, and I decide if you come in or not. That's how Rabban Gamliel managed his yeshiva. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah got rid of the guard. It says that day they had another 500-600 benches that they added to the yeshiva because everybody came. They all wanted to learn, but they were rejected by Rabban Gamliel. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah got rid of the guard, and the whole place filled up. They had to add lots and lots of benches for everybody to come and to learn. It says that night Rabban Gamliel had a dream. And the Gemara says that his dream was that he saw barrels, beautiful barrels, but he saw that the wine inside wasn't good. So he took it as a message that you did the right thing. Because, yeah, you have lots of barrels of wine, but the wine inside is spoiled. Says the Gemara back, Velohi, but it's not true. Because the heavens were trying to relax Rabban Gamliel. He was concerned, maybe I prevented Torah from Am Yisrael. And they wanted to calm him down from heaven, so they showed him this dream. But really, it was incorrect. He was supposed to let everyone come in. That's what the Gemara comes out.
That's the right way, actually.
Right? That's an interesting thing. However, I want to ask you right now, what was Rabban Gamliel trying to do? He was trying to do what we just learned. He was trying to do this concept of kol mi she'en tocho kebaro, whoever doesn't have his inside like the outside, then it says he's even more of a rasha than the guy who's on the radio saying, let's hang the people by their tefillin.
People can learn, Rabbi.
Oh, okay. Very good. So I want to just explain something which is very important. Chassidut teaches a very important concept. The concept which is brought in Chassidut from the Tanya and from others, from Zohar, the concept is that you should know, gentlemen, it's very important to understand what I'm about to tell you. I can't emphasize what I'm about to tell you enough. It's super, super, super duper important. It's based off of a Rambam. The Rambam is based off of a Gemara. The Rambam writes, the famous Rambam, when you have what's called a recalcitrant husband. Recalcitrant husband means that the guy is not giving his wife a get. He's supposed to divorce her. They're not living happily anymore. And the fellow is refusing to divorce his wife. Now she wants to get remarried. She wants to start another life. They're separated. They're not together, but he's not giving his wife a get. So there's a Rambam based on a Gemara that says something very interesting. We know that the halacha is you can never force someone to give a get. If it's forced, it's a not kosher get. If it's a forced get, it's not kosher. You cannot force the guy to give it. There's a whole big question about certain acts, if that's considered forcing him or not. But then comes along the Rambam and says, but what do we do with such a guy? The Rambam says, we beat him up until the guy says, I want to give it. Listen.
You're allowed to do that?
Listen to what the Rambam says. I'm not saying legally you're allowed to do that. Don't quote me as far as the law is concerned. But it says, you beat the guy up until the guy says, I want to give it. So the Rambam decides to give an explanation. Why is this okay? Obviously, you all yelled at me. You're forcing the guy to give it. So what did he says, I want? He doesn't really want. He's getting beat up. He wants to stop getting beaten up. He doesn't want to actually give the get. How does this work? Explains the Rambam. It works because, and here's the key, every Jew inside of him is a chelek eloka mima'al mamash, which means the neshama that is in each one of us is on a higher level than even an angel. Because the neshama that is inside of each one of us is actually a piece of Hashem. He blows into you like when you blow into a balloon. So your air is in that balloon, right? Hashem blew into your mouth and your nostrils a neshama when you were born.
Only the
Right?
Jew, only the Yehudi.
Goyim have a different mechanism. Goyim have a different mechanism. It's not the same thing, but but the point is you have a piece of Hashem inside of you. That piece of Hashem wants to connect to Hashem, wants to do what Hashem wants because it's Hashem. It's a part of Hashem. You understand? Now, it's covered up. It's covered up with many layers. It's covered up with the body. It's covered up with desires, with mundane desires. It desires all kinds of things. But the bottom line is that deep, deep, deep down inside of you is that neshama, and that neshama wants to do only what Hashem wants it to do. Only. When this guy is getting beaten up, and then at some point he says, I want to give the get to his wife, right? So then, says the Rambam, you should know, he's telling you the truth. Because the neshama that's deep down inside of him wants to give the get. He thinks that, who am I? You have to ask yourself, who am I? Am I my physical body? Or am I the neshama in my body? And the answer is, the physical body doesn't last forever. Who we really are is our neshama deep down inside. Very important to understand this. So therefore, a person might think to himself, you know, I'm fake, I'm phony. I'm someone that my inside is not like my outside. Says the Rambam, it doesn't work that way. Your inside is a neshama of Hashem. And when that is revealed, then it's the inside like the outside. I actually heard this same fundamental idea a few weeks ago. I was in Shabbat at the Torah U'Mesorah convention. And they had all of the Gdolei Israel in America that were there. It's amazing. It's amazing to see all these Torah giants. Shmuel Kamenetsky, Rosh Yeshiva of Lakewood. I mean, it's amazing. So I heard Sudat Shlishit, a speech from Reb David Shuster, who's the Rosh Yeshiva of Lakewood. You know what it means to be the Rosh Yeshiva of Lakewood? He's Geona Geonim. It's unbelievable. Anyway, so he had a comment to make. The pamphlet that they gave out at the Torah U'Mesorah convention, it's a convention for people that are teachers and rebbeim of children. And the pamphlet said this convention is about instilling Torah values in our children. to give them the Torah values. Rav David Shustel got up at Sudash Lishit and he said, this is wrong. You don't give them Torah values. They already have the Torah values. You know why? It's in their neshama. They're born with it. You awaken the Torah values that are in their neshama. You don't instill it in them. Hashem instilled it in them. It's there naturally because your neshama is a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the point beautiful point. Awaken the Torah values, not instill it. It's already there. Beautiful. Anyway, point that I'm trying to bring out over here. Oh, so that's the thing. Rabban Gamliel was very strict on this concept that you have to bring it out first. First, before you come to my yeshiva, work on yourself. Bring it out ahead of time. Then I work with you. That's how Rabban Gamliel looked at it. That's how he said, listen, you want to do it? You have to earn it. I'm not just going to give it to anybody. You have to earn that I should teach you. What? No, but
he gives nothing.
Listen, you have to understand. Hey, 1 second. You want to go learn? You learned in Baruch Hashem, Colombia, right? Do they accept everybody in Colombia? Right? No, they don't accept everybody in Colombia. You have to earn it to get in, right? Baruch Hashem. It's big. It's a big deal. Emet or no?
No, but I'm מרחיק 70% מהיהודים.
Okay, but I'm trying to explain. Somebody wants to, that's how Rabban Gamliel, listen, you're right. At the end of the Gemara says what you're saying. But I'm just explaining what Rabban Gamliel was thinking, right?
זה כמו שמישהו יבוא לפה יהודי, לא, אתה לא מספיק דתי, אל תבוא לפה.
הוא לא אמר את זה. No. Then that is something else. We're talking about study. No, this is shul. This is shul. Talking about yeshiva, learning to be. No, you have to. They were talking about becoming a Talmid Chacham. That's the idea. Anyway, the point is that was his take on it. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, no, we have to let everybody in. Rabotai, I didn't get through half of what I wanted to speak about, but
tomorrow at 8 o'clock again.
What?
Tomorrow at 8 o'clock.
But looks like we're benching, so let's stop over here, guys. We're gonna